Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is James Quintero. I represent the Texas Public Policy Foundation, and I've had a minute to catch my breath, so hopefully I won't huff and puff my way through this one. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in favor of SB 2010. Over the interim, I had an opportunity to examine guaranteed income programs both here in Texas and nationally. I wanted to share a few observations with you. First, it's very obvious that there is a well-funded, well-organized infrastructure in place to advocate for, assist with, and learn from the implementation of guaranteed income programs. The players in this space include institutions of higher education who specialize in conceptual framework development, conduct empirical research, and manufacture intellectual ammunition. Second, advocacy associations use academic literature to whip up political support, provide messaging and public relations, and even identify specific stakeholders to hold up for storytelling purposes. A third actor in the space are nonprofit organizations who assist with program implementation and data collection. And lastly, we have activist governmental entities who appear eager to engage in these types of social engineering experiments. And as a result of this coordinated effort nationally, over 200 guaranteed income programs have been launched, including several here in Texas. A second observation that I'll offer up is that federal funds provided the monies necessary to either start or supplement these cash transfer programs. This was certainly the case, as you'll see in your document. This was the case with San Antonio's $5 million program, El Paso's $900,000 program, and Harris County's $20.5 million program. The fact that these programs were either established or carried along by temporary pandemic aid is worth noting because of the tendency of government to resist cutting people and programs. And one of the things that I note in the document is the fact that I'm at least concerned by the notion that some of these programs would be continued through the imposition of a local tax to provide revenues locally. I think now is a very bad time to raise taxes. And a third observation that I'll offer up is the fact that there are legitimate legal concerns around the implementation of these programs. I think it's very clear when you look at the statutes pertaining to county governments that there is no authorization for counties to engage in this type of activity. When it gets to home rule cities, it's a little less clear, but if you go back to the Texas Constitution and all of its various gift clause prohibitions, I think it's fairly reasonable to suggest that guaranteed income programs run afoul of the gift clause prohibitions in the Texas Constitution. In the case that they do not, I think that's a very clear indication that the legislature needs to revisit those constitutional prohibitions and strengthen them to make it unmistakably clear that public monies are for public benefit. And so I want to hopefully encourage the body to look favorably on this piece of legislation. I look forward to any questions you might have.
Senator West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I agree with you.
Oh, yes, sir.
As it relates to state dollars.
Yes, sir.
Not federal dollars. I think the federal government, would you not agree, has authority over how it allocates federal tax dollars as opposed to state tax dollars. Let me, maybe that was not framed correctly. The federal government cannot tell us in the state of Texas how to spend our state tax dollars. Would you agree?
So if you look at the various COVID measures that were implemented, there were certain restrictions put into place where the federal government said you may not spend these funds in this manner, tax relief being one of those.
And I'm talking about, can the federal government tell us in the state of Texas how to spend state tax dollars?
There are maintenance of effort requirements along with other conditional elements when it comes to the receipt of federal grant monies.
Receipt. That's not the question I asked, James. Come on there.
Generally speaking, I would agree.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay. And so these dollars that we're dealing with, are they coming from state tax dollars or from the federal government?
I think that's a fair question. I would humbly contend that they come from the same source, which is the American taxpayer.
Well, that was good too. That was pretty good. Pretty good. You know the question I'm asking, though, don't you? And that's kind of an open question right now, correct? Because when these programs, from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, because I hadn't looked at all of the different programs, they're spending federal tax dollars as opposed to state tax dollars. That's my understanding.
By and large. Now, there is, I think if you look at a lot of the commentary surrounding both the original implementation as well as thoughts about continuing these programs, it's very clear that there's a desire to see them become permanent.
Okay, let's talk about the permanent nature.
Yes,
And
sir.
I think you mentioned it a few minutes ago. Some cities are looking at doing a tax election, property tax election.
Prior to the litigation involving these programs, I think it was very clear that certain communities were interested in seeing them become permanent.
Okay, and that litigation is on appeal right now, is that correct? Is it final?
I believe so. I'll be honest, it's been a few months since I've looked at
I
it.
got you. But if local taxpayers, let me ask you a general question.
Yes, sir.
Do you believe in government closest to the people is best for the people?
I believe in self-government.
And so,
That's a good answer.
okay, all right. So you don't know the answer to the question.
Oh, I'm a proponent of self-government. So,
What does that mean in relation to the question that I just asked you?
well, to the extent that government can provide a framework by which the individual can grow, develop, and prosper, I think that's all well and appropriate, and it's within the bounds of the constitutional order. But to the extent that we're engaging in redistribution, particularly of this nature, where there's the potential for growing government dependency, the misuse of funds, and kind of just the general growth of government, I find it to be not to my liking.
Or not to your liking?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all
Yes, sir.
So you would agree that everyone has a right to have a perspective on an issue, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so if local taxpayers believe that these types of programs benefit their community, they have a right to have that perspective, right?
Well, in the context of developing and articulating a political view, absolutely, everyone has that right. However, if you look at the Texas Constitution, I'm firmly in the camp that the Constitution prohibits giving away public monies for private gain. And so if you're looking at it from a legal perspective, I don't believe that local communities have that authority.
Private gain.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if you have a self-ruled city, that analysis applies to a self-ruled city. If that self-ruled city decides to have an election to see whether or not those types of programs benefit the community as opposed to an individual through private gain.
Well, presumably the monies that are distributed go to either an individual or a household, and when those are the circumstances, I think it's private gain, in my mind.
You and I'll sit down and talk about this.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right.
I welcome it, sir.
I look forward to it. Okay.